At the present time, in a universe of legends using blades and sorcery, Legends landmass has enormous conflict occurring because of the evil presence Sovereign Jump starting a full-scale war against every one of the races. With the assistance from evil spirits increasing Sovereign's already harsh strength, the Devil Sovereign's military resembles a hot blade through butter in their assaults, and the realms of the different races crumble to pieces. Consistently, just mankind endures in their opposition. Unfortunately, on account of the inside struggle and uprisings among the people, their realms fall alongside their protections as they give up. This leaves Elizabeth named as the most grounded Devil Sovereign in history, and gets her position as the main leader of the world. At the human realm, Pushcart Smith asks Elizabeth not to think she has won the fight alone, as later on she will be crushed totally by their legend. Like in the legends, the human domain ruler, Whis Malfoy, Cart's understudy, kicks Handtruck and advises him to get things straight, as Her Highness Elizabeth isn't requesting his opinion, yet providing him a request. Handtruck lets Whis Malfoy know that he's a patricide-committing, foe-inviting backstabber of humanity, as he even developed him as though he were the forecasted legend to no end. Malfoy lets him know he's loaded with garbage, and chooses to send him to his dead dad since he misses his feudal dad to such an extent. Elizabeth orders Whis Malfoy to wait as he is going to strike Handtruck in the wake of changing. She requests that Cart make sense of what he implied when he said he would remain close by later on, which will end in the Sovereign's loss. She requests a clarification for his words and lets him know that she has large number of various ways of exacerbating him, other than death. Handtruck tells Elizabeth about the prediction that states when the foreseen legend takes out the sacred blade, it will mark the finish of the evil race's rule. Handtruck tells Sovereign Elizabeth he won't ever reveal where the sacred sword is implanted in the stone stage in the fundamental corridor, as he will not double-cross humanity. Elizabeth strolls toward the blessed blade and questions how the legend discusses the legend getting the option to challenge the Sovereign since he takes out the sword. Elizabeth lets them know she anticipates the legend's appearance. The first, second, third, and fourth years under Elizabeth's rule passed, and in the fifth year, conversations spread about how every single past training and imbalances among the races were annulled. Everybody had the option to live on without questions in peace and harmony. Accordingly, Legends landmass started flourishing and prospering quickly. In the meantime, expecting that this uncommon harmony may be obliterated, a screw-up coalition arose, undauntedly dismissing the existence of the forecasted legend. In the evil presence domain, the previous human realm accumulates every one of the races and asks about any news about the forecasted legend. Twilia, the chancellor of the mythical being race, illuminates Elizabeth that the mythical person race has activated all their tree bugs to look, yet has not tracked down any data about the legend. Heimerdinger, the chancellor of the Bantam race, tells her that while the dwarves are not exceptionally gifted at gathering data, their aggregated information from weapon stores uncovers no dubious action. Aristotle, the Chancellor of Mankind, communicates his conviction that the foreseen legend's endeavor to remain against them will be to no end, and that there is no cause for concern. Jim, Chancellor of the Evil Spirit race, lets Aristotle know that he probably won't be aware since he gone along with them. Yet Elizabeth isn't stressed over the foreseen legend. All things being equal, she maintains that he should come so she can act in light of the prescience. Elizabeth has accumulated a wide range of old books on sorcery and war strategies to get ready, as she murmurs to him. Mughal, Chancellor of the Beastman race, murmurs that their leader, Elizabeth, could obliterate Legends landmass in a moment assuming she wills it. Twilia calls Handtruck a moron, faulting him for the ongoing issues and communicating that they are so lucky to have Elizabeth administering them. She recommends they ought to allow the foreseen legend to bite the dust. All at once, Cart Smith, previously the consecrated cleric of humanity, and currently the leader of the evil spirit sovereign group of followers of the counter-foreseen legend affiliation, drives their dissent against the legend, encouraging help for the rule of Her Highness. Elizabeth utilizes her ability to lift Pushcart and requests he account for himself, asking where the foreseen legend is. Pushcart tells her that the prescience doesn't need to be precise, involving her to act as a demonstration of how the objective could surpass the prophecy's assumptions. Whis Malfoy concurs, expressing that it would be a grave offense to apply the prophecy to Elizabeth, as their sovereign need not disapprove at all. He tells her that he has new discoveries regarding this situation. Elizabeth slaps him and advises him to get lost, to which he says he understands. Elizabeth calls them a lot of junk and releases a strong assault from her hold. She pronounces that she has arrived at the pinnacle of the world, holding extreme power. She says she is trusting that the amazing legend will challenge her, aiming to turn into his venturing stone to distinction. She strolls toward the heavenly sword, considering her excursion. She reviews how she concentrated on every one of the antiquated wizardry books of the legend landmass, getting through countless difficulties. As she continued looking for power, she made the Judgment Day wizardry, all in anticipation of the unbelievable legends test. Disappointed, she questions where the foreseen legend is, as he can't seem to show up. She chooses to search out the foreseen legend herself, since he isn't coming to her. Her choice shocks the various races, who implore her not to proceed with it. They dread the outcomes of her activities and the chaos that could result. Elizabeth gets a handle on the blessed blade, ruining the environment due to the joined force of her and the sword. The races close by safeguard themselves from the extreme energy transmitting from her. Tweelia, watching in amazement and dread, questions whether Sovereign Elizabeth will take out the heavenly sword, knowing the monstrous power it holds and the potential calamity it could bring. In an unexpected move, Elizabeth takes out the sacred sword and strongly asks who said just the unbelievable legend could do as such. With the force of the heavenly blade, she utilizes her internal vision to find the hiding spot of the foreseen legend. She decided to utilize her pit enchantment, intended for limited instant transportation. As she gets ready to leave, Whis Malfoy begs Elizabeth to allow him to keep serving close by. Ignoring his pleads, she activates her wizardry and magically transports away to go find the legend. In the beginner town, the unbelievable legend, Leping, is seen cultivating, content, and cheerful as he partakes in the serenity. As he works, he reviews his past, prompting a flashback. The scene moves to a transport, where Leping, a standard office laborer, is considering his dull life. He never developed an interest in messing around or watching anime. The main thing he found joy in was watching his #1 brief recordings on his telephone returning. Returning to the present, Leping is watching his #1 brief video to no one's surprise. The video shows the right approach to treating by beginning with picking harsh bamboo shoots, a fundamental piece of making luocephane. As he watches, he feels an ache of jealousy, wanting to live such a basic, satisfying life. Out of nowhere, he winds up shipped to the novice town. He considers how he gradually mastered the essential abilities to survive in the beginner town under the direction of the amateur frameworks and teachings, as he really is clueless about the various races by any means. As he questions on the off chance that this serene, peaceful life is what he generally needed, he understands how satisfying it feels. He sees that his body is a lot more grounded than when he was working in his old work, partaking in the actual work and natural quality of his new life. He recalls how the amateur guides request that he start his real-world experience, since he has completed the beginner preparing and met every one of the requirements to leave the novice town. He questions if it's truly important to go, as he appreciates remaining in the town. However, the framework tells him that assuming that he leaves, he will meet a wide range of individuals on the planet, gain incredible blades and wizardry abilities from them, become an unbelievable legend, and get the opportunity to overcome the Devil Lord. In this way, the framework urges him to begin his experience. Leping lets the framework know that he would rather not kill the evil spirit ruler and inquires as to whether he can essentially keep living in the town as he partakes in his quiet life there and isn't energetic for experience. The framework answers that this isn't a choice. It makes sense of that killing the Devil Lord is an essential piece of his central goal, and afterward encourages him to begin his experience and embrace the excursion ahead. Leping ponders how the framework continues to encourage him to leave the town and begin an adventure. He feels that the framework is just annoying and chooses to overlook its messages about killing the evil spirit ruler. He needs to keep carrying on with his quiet life always in the town. The beginner town is safeguarded by an extraordinary time boundary that conceals it for security. And inside this barrier, time moves in an unexpected way. There are more than 24 hours in a day. This additional time allows him to appreciate activities he cherishes, like cultivating, hunting, manufacturing, and pondering. in spite of staying alert, that sword and wizardry abilities may be significant for an experience. He feels they are excessive for him right now since he doesn't want to leave the town. He additionally thinks about how he gradually fabricated his peaceful home without any preparation by trading focuses for novice errands. Then, at some point, the framework unexpectedly crashes and vanishes. Before it evaporates, it uncovers how the world is brimming with sword and wizardry, yet he just knows how to cultivate. Overlooking its ideas, he questions how he could be an unbelievable legend, and expectations he will kick the bucket soon on account of the evil spirit ruler. Back in the present, Leping feels hungry, following a bustling day of cultivating, and chooses to set up a feast. He sees that the kindling is running short, and recalls that he neglected to bring Da Zhuang's hatchet back from the forest when he went out to cleave wood in the first part of the day. In the meantime, the mists are in strife because of Elizabeth's landing in the beginner town, and she feels fulfilled seeing Leping. Confounding the tumultuous mists, Leping asks why it's out of nowhere going to rain. He ponders the garments and dried fish he spread outside and races to get them together. Leping feels better since he rapidly packs his dried fish and hot dog before they turn sour. All at once, his electronic pet canine, Wang Kai, comes over and begins yelping. Wang Chai is attempting to tell Leping that Elizabeth is here. Nonetheless, Leping doesn't get what Wang Chai is attempting to say. He thinks Wang Kai is simply being loud and advises him to quit yapping and go inside since it seems as though it will rain soon. Leping sees Elizabeth overhead with her wings spread wide. Inquisitive and befuddled, he asks Wang Chai what it is, which drives Elizabeth mad. She calls him stupid and asks how he considering her a thing. Leping rapidly apologizes, making sense of that he didn't see obviously that it was an individual. He then asks as to why another person needed to go along with them, doubting on the off chance that the novice town shouldn't be protected. Elizabeth chooses to test Leping first by tossing a sacred sword at him. Leping, not understanding what she's talking about, is surprised. He's stunned when he out of nowhere feels something fly into his hand and understands it's the sacred sword Elizabeth recently tossed. Elizabeth questions what's happening before perceiving how low Leping's abilities are while he's holding the blade. She knows the sacred sword Alpha can't be off base in reading a commendable individual strength and contemplates whether Leping is concealing his actual power. She presents herself as the most grounded evil presence sovereign in history and chooses to decimate him today. She then, at that point, initiates her void sorcery, prepared to assault. Leping becomes terrified and questions why Elizabeth is here, taking note of that he hasn't left the town. He advises Wang Chai to abstain from inciting her, dreading the worst. As he runs into the house, he begins to sort things out. He recalls that the framework had cautioned him that the arrival of the evil presence sovereign was inescapable, regardless of whether he remained inside the beginner town. Pondering his encounters, he understands he has been doomed not long ago. With the last options remaining before him, he feels overpowered and considers what choices he has, other than surrendering to his destiny. Leping decides to acknowledge his destiny with a feeling of satisfaction. He feels no lament, realizing he had wonderful times in the beginner town. Eventually, he takes steps to get back to his beginning stage and face whatever comes straight away. He looks out at Elizabeth one final time and afterward shuts the way to his home. Elizabeth, astounded, considers what Leping implied by showing her that exit plan. She envisions him advising her to come at him with all that she has. Elizabeth's creative mind drives her mad, and she calls Leping a self-important jerk. In her rage, she requests that he pass on and releases a strong assault on the house. In the meantime, Wang Chai, the electronic canine, who is in fight mode, completes its computations and flames its own assault at Elizabeth. The two forces collide, making an emotional conflict. Wang Kai woofs outside the house, making Elizabeth imagine that Leping, the legend from the legend, is similarly just about as egotistical as she anticipated. She contemplates whether he depends on cutting-edge enchanted apparatuses. Accepting that everything and everyone is beneath her, she attempts to initiate her prophetically calamitous sorcery. Be that as it may, she rapidly loses interest in examining him further, and chooses to end it by enacting her Earth re-evaluating spell. In the meantime, Wang Chai finishes its estimations and snaps the power, sending a quantum mechanics dark opening very high. Elizabeth feels it's pointless and chooses to disappear, taking the land with her. In any case, A quantum mechanical dark opening disturbs her whole world, destroying wizardry, making it break. Elizabeth is astonished to see her enchantments breaking and considers what Leping did inside the house to cause this. Leping, who is hanging tight for dear life, advises Elizabeth to come to him as he lies on his bed, ready for what is to come. Elizabeth, unable to leave the novice town, boils down to the land, making Wang Kai continue woofing. Elizabeth giggles when she sees Wang Kai woofing and acknowledges she underrated Liling eventually. As she changes into her evil spirit structure, Elizabeth cautions Wang Kai not to get excessively loaded with himself, making sense of that she has just been utilizing about a third of her power up to this point. She calls Wang Kai a rash miscreant and chooses to show him what genuine fear resembles. With a detestable chuckle, she releases her assault on Wang Kai. After an hour, Leping, who has been lying on his bed hanging tight for dear life and has nodded off, awakens. He contemplates whether he is dead and questions on the off chance that he isn't in his room. Leping, having an uncomfortable from the calm climate, chooses to head outside, thinking the evil present sovereign may be waiting for him like a crazy person. He cautiously opens the entryway and is shocked to see Elizabeth still there with Wang Kai, who has been obliterated by her, in her grasp. Elizabeth, seeing Leping, apologizes and lets him know she has likewise annihilated the enchanted instruments he was happy for. Notwithstanding the harm, Leping keeps cool-headed. He tells Elizabeth it's all right and inquires as to whether they can sit down and talk. Elizabeth tells Leping that they will plunk down to talk after she kills him. Her body begins to shake as she questions on the off chance that being pushed as far as possible is the end that was anticipated for her. She implodes, and Leping hurries to her, inquiring as to whether she is okay while assisting her with sitting on the floor. Elizabeth disperses her evil presence structure, leaving her bare, which makes Leping question what she is doing and is stunned to see her exposure. Elizabeth, presently dressed and with binds on her wrists, awakens and feels she has experienced an embarrassing loss. She questions, assuming that Leping chose to show his capability to the world by detaining her as opposed to making a move to kill her. She attempts to deliver herself, yet fails. She considers how she has never seen this kind of bind, which is an unbelievable class curio, and questions how much power Leping is keeping down. Elizabeth sees a couple of unusual things in Leping's room and surmises they are most certainly not basic. She understands she has underestimated Leping, thinking he is significantly more fiendish than she had envisioned. While Leping comes in with some food and thinks that she is conscious, Elizabeth tells him not to expect any kindness if he has any intention to kill her. Leping recognizes how genuinely startling Elizabeth is, yet later understands that this is his main opportunity to live and concludes he should immediately jump all over the chance. He inquires as to whether they can talk and make sense of how he bound her as a safeguard because of how frightening she is, and rapidly explains that he implies how imposing she is. As he accepts, there probably been a misunderstanding among them, and tells her he will open the binds immediately for them to talk. Elizabeth envisions Leping jokingly saying sorry, as far as she might be concerned, proposing that there probably been a misunderstanding from the very start for her to think she was sufficiently considerable to challenge him, and tells him she was totally off base and should satisfy his request to live. After her creative mind runs its course, she asks Leping in the event that he is undermining her, the evil presence sovereign, while he's opening the cuff. Leping tells Elizabeth that he has opened the binds to show he has no evil intentions. He says they ought to have the discussion they talked about. Elizabeth answers by saying what is happening is truly horrible to her. She realizes that a resilient individual knows that when generally to be adaptable and when to stand firm. While she consents to get through the circumstance for the time being, she cautions him that he will lament his haughtiness later on. Leping advises Elizabeth to rest, and starts thinking how everybody is interested about why he didn't kill the evil present sovereign while she was oblivious. He ponders how, on earth of sword and sorcery, it's typical for the evil present sovereign to have a restoration expertise. While killing chickens and fish for soup is a certain something, he accepts he can't force himself to kill a human, regardless of whether she's an evil spirit sovereign. He presumes that settling the contention between the evil spirit sovereign and the legend doesn't need killing or battling. All things being equal, that's what he believes on the off chance that he can show he has nothing but good intentions and become her companion. He can keep on living cheerfully and chuckles while leaving the room, yet Elizabeth thinks he is taunting her. Leping gets Wang Chai, who he thinks has become truly a wreck, on out of the room so Elizabeth can rest.
Wang Kai, on the off chance that Leping's most impressive wizardry instrument. Hearing which, he internally says it's no enchanted device, it's only a tad thing he made while living over here, out of wariness. He comments that you could say Wonkai was created by him as of late. Hearing which, Elizabeth noxiously grins and internally says it's time, since it's his chance to be thoughtless. Since the cuffs restricting her have been loosened, she can subtly utilize chasm wizardry, limitless sorcery to recuperate rapidly. And since Leping has lost his most significant enchantment apparatus, it's similar to him losing his right arm, which implies the overall influence has shifted towards her. She gets up and apologizes for breaking his things, yet he guarantees her that it's fine since the memory card is still here. She says it is the best time for her to kill him, the unbelievable legend. As Leping pivots and says the body can be fixed, prior to disclosing a cabinet loaded with Wonkai bodies, making sense of that he'd previously gotten ready for this sort of circumstance so she doesn't have to stress. As Elizabeth watches in shock, Leping culls the memory card into another Wonkai and it right away enacts. He clears up that it's a good time for have a friend, yet it's wicked some of the time, so he uncommonly just initiates one at home. Elizabeth deciphers this as Leping manically snickering alongside his fiendish enchanted apparatus and puts down in dismay. She unexpectedly smells a fragrance and asks where it's coming from. Leping makes sense of that. He made a food to warm her up since she blacked out of wariness. He gives her dumplings and a meat porridge, seeing which Elizabeth gradually swallows and her stomach begins moaning. Leping merrily says these are undeniably produced using the vegetables and grains he developed himself, totally regular, and requests that she have a taste, thinking tackling clashes with delightful food will work. She gradually gets a dumpling and takes a chomp. However, Leping can't ready to let know if her demeanor's changed and apprehensively contemplates whether the evil present sovereign, with her high status, will see the value in these beginner town things, despite the fact that he's very positive about his cooking. Notwithstanding, Elizabeth rapidly wraps the plate of dumplings and destroys due to how delightful it is, commenting that with each chomp, the meat juices burst like firecrackers in her mouth with a characteristic and unadorned flavor, as well as containing a high convergence of enchanted energy. She's shocked by the way that this world really has such a scrumptious delicacy and concedes that even she, the evil spirit sovereign, can't tolerate swallowing the last chomp. At the point when she swallows it, she unexpectedly moans in fulfillment before a well of lava emits inside her. She quickly asks Leping what he put inside the dumplings since they're so hot. Terrified, he makes sense of he added a lit piece stew as indicated by his own taste and inquires as to whether she could do without hot food. She energetically acknowledges she was correct from the start, since there were no decent expectations. The shrewd legend has detained her equitable to involve her as a subject for his examination tests. Leping abruptly acknowledges something and requests that she have the century egg and lean pork congee he made for her since it decreases intensity and fire. As she's actually overwhelmed by the zestiness, Elizabeth comments that he's taking care of toxin on one hand and giving a remedy on the other, understanding that he simply plans to play with her in the center of his hand. However, it's basically impossible to get around it since this bizarre inclination is excessively awkward. She gradually takes a touch of the meat porridge and quickly rises above to paradise, savoring how tranquil and agreeable this feeling is. The mission for global control, the battle between the devil ruler and the legend, these unsettling influences never again concern her. She needs to relinquish all that and live uninhibitedly. Yet this is a direct result of these, that she's found the way in which really irrelevant she is. Once more, her power advances, and she turns into a 3-star evil spirit sovereign, shocked to see that in the wake of devouring food, she was brought into another domain, and under the presence of 2 outrageous improvements, her power has progressed. She tells Leping to not imagine and asks what he needs, hearing which he anxiously asks what she's reasoning and uncovers that he simply believes them should investigate how an evil presence sovereign and a legend can coincide. Elizabeth comments that he has at last uncovered his actual aims and deciphers what he said as him pronouncing that in this world, she's the only one qualified to be the subject of his examination as the legend, and advising her to join his side so he can assist her with becoming more grounded and rout him. Truly, Leping worriedly inquires as to whether that is fine and offers to keep making nourishment for her. Infuriated, she deep down pronounces that a knight might be killed, however not disgraced, and that she is the evil spirit sovereign. She sees him malevolently telling her that to become more grounded, he can help her, and is additionally anticipating see whether she's adequately certified to beat him. She advises him to neglect and stands on the bed. She focuses at him and advises him to pay attention to her, conceding that she can concur with his conditions, yet he ought to know that she's doing this not out of dread, however to seek after the zenith of solidarity. Scared, Leping thinks about what she would fear him for when she's the evil spirit sovereign who holds the power and can do as she wishes. Moreover, she additionally tells him to not imagine that she'll bring down her head and be agreeable while living here, since her poise as the devil's sovereign must never be abused. In any case, regardless of whether she needs to forfeit everything, she will obliterate him. He shakily concurs and says they ought to get along now. She advises him to go ahead and come over to do any examination and expresses in the event that there's anything delightful, she needs everything. After a year, Leping utilizes the blessed blade, Alpha, to slash a few wood and considers what he ought to do since things have gotten convoluted. He makes sense of that since the evil presence sovereign effectively entered and broke the defensive boundary of the novice town, which is the reason time here has progressively synchronized with the rest of the world. The synchronization isn't the issue. Yet what's grievous is that without the hindrance's security, the amateur town has lost its camouflage capability and is totally uncovered in the wild, and the beasts showing up adjacent don't appear to be so basic. Nonetheless, in view of the evil spirit sovereign's presence here, they wouldn't even play with the possibility of moving toward, which could imply that once the devil sovereign leaves, he'll be totally uncovered. My man's simply making an effort not to get demolished. Elizabeth out of nowhere calls for himself and inquires as to why lunch isn't prepared at this point, so he swiftly says he's coming immediately. Leping goes to see a tubby-looking Elizabeth watching the TV and saying she's burnt out on watching these accounts of his. She inquires as to whether he can get a genuinely new thing from that arrangement of his. So he says the framework has since a long time ago vanished and that lunch is prepared. She says she'll be there in a second and request wings to travel to the lunch. She asks what sort of toxic substance he's taking care of her in these chips, since she feels like the more she eats, the lazier she turns out to be, deep down commenting that he's utilizing the appearance of delightful food to deaden her with these sluggish acting toxic substances so he can lead her to add up to corruption. He makes sense of these chips are high in calories, so eating an excessive number of these can without much of a stretch collect in fat, which normally prompts individuals getting fat. Elizabeth looks at how much her weight has developed and utilizes remote ocean wizardry, negative quality transformation, to immediately return her to the state she was in a year prior. She makes sense of all the fat gathered in her body has been changed over into otherworldly power, stunning Leping. She comments that one more stunt of his has been oiled now and inquires as to whether he feels frustrated, so he anxiously expresses that anything she says is correct and that they ought to eat. She comments that the present lunch impeccably suits her taste and cautions him that she won't keep down before rapidly beginning to eat the food up. He casually says he can make more in the event that this isn't sufficient, stunning her since she deciphers it as him advising her to fill herself out before he can kill her. He goes to make dessert for her as Elizabeth irately questions in the event that he's actually dealing with her like a pig when she has gotten through multiple times in the previous year and ought to can kill him now. He draws out her number one pudding and her annoyance immediately vanishes, seeing which Leping says she is easy to manage since the right food effectively quiets her down. In the interim, a couple of travelers are frantically running from ghosts that utilization's spatial tiering nail enclosure to trap them. The man tells his little girl, Evel, to sit tight for him while he keeps them down and to continue onward towards the following town, since she will be protected there. Evil mournfully says she can't let him and Break be, so he speedily advises her that he guaranteed her mom he would safeguard her regardless of anything. An apparition brings an enormous chunk of phantom fire to fire at them, so the man rapidly says he needs to complete this rapidly and chooses to utilize the most grounded move. He races up high and cuts the ghost into two. However, another gradually ingests its remainders and transforms into a changed rendition. Evel pronounces that she won't abandon him come what may and shoots out her normal bolts at the changed apparition, yet it easily assimilates them. Her dad says she can't deal with the dim society's messengers and advises her to rush and leave since even he doesn't have any idea how long he can hold them here. In the meantime, the witness surges forward and shuts the distance among him and the man. The man rapidly raises his blade to impede the blow. However, the missionary punches him away. Stunned, the man lets out blood and feebly advises Evel to go rapidly and not stress over him. Unexpectedly, the missionary terrains before them and converges with two additional messengers, changing into a Goliath transformed missionary that peers down on them. Evel speedily requests her dad to be saved and consents to go with them. However, the missionary thunders, and she understands she's going to bite the dust. The messenger prepares to crush them into obscurity, yet a colossal ruler mammoth out of nowhere shows up and pulverizes it to a mash underneath its feet. Confounded, Evel sees a sanctuary over the mammoth, and an undying frog gradually shows up in the sanctuary and illuminates his older sibling that the risk has been cleared, asking how they ought to manage these two innocuous people. Remaining on its head, Wang Chai tells him to not hurt these people since he will take them back so the expert can manage them. In a house, Evel out of nowhere awakens, but to see the beast yet understands she's in a typical house. She recalls her dad and rushes out to assist him with getting proceeded, however finds him utilizing his muscle outside. Leping acclaims his solidarity before Elizabeth kicks Wang Kai away and irately inquires as to why he brought these rabble back. While Leping keeps appreciating the man's muscles, Elizabeth sees that Evel has awakened and advises her to get moving in light of the fact that she was the first here. Leping says they ought to head inside and talk, since it's intriguing for them to have visitors. The man and his little girl accept the water Leping gives them is extraordinary enchantment water, and the man lets his girl know that he could not have possibly been here to converse with her, notwithstanding that water. Dazed, Evel inquires as to whether they can truly drink something so marvelous. However, Leping says they're excessively kind and guarantees them that it's fine. After taking a taste, they immediately feel settled and get through one level. Leping offers them some more, but the man says stop, accepting he's fundamentally a divine being, as Leping deep down comments that he would offer them a few tidbits. Yet Elizabeth has removed them and could get irritated. Man, she's assuming the part of an intense bitch. He was sorry, Ace to the terrified couple about the staleness in what he can serve. Then Leping strays and asks Abhorrent's dad for what valid reason they were both gone after in any case. Detestable's dad clears up that it was expected for the mythical person's bloodline inside Abhorrent. Malicious further adds that her mom is the mythical being Saintis who had her when she went gaga for her dad. The main issue was that intermarriages between races were prohibited by the mythical being race. Hearing this, Elizabeth says that it's unthinkable as the band was lifted quite a while in the past, subject to the devil sovereign. Yet reality appears to vary, as Shrewd's mom had to get back to the blessed place that is known for the mythical beings, and Underhanded's dad concealed her away. Lying then at that point inquired as to whether the mythical beings were later them subsequent to finding their reality. Shockingly, however, the response is no. Both were saved after Detestable's mom chose to get back to the mythical person clan. Rather, the ones pursuing them right currently are invo of the dull society from the devil domain. With this disclosure, Lip Torment projects a dubious Gannett Elizabeth, which procures him a few cruel words from the evil present sovereign. Still, however, this present circumstance piques Elizabeth's advantage as she asks the two where the dim organization from the evil presence domain came from and why they are catching mythical beings. Abhorrent's dad answers that it is reputed that the dim organization is directing human tests to resuscitate the devil. Sovereign Elizabeth, since L's are one of the fundamental materials, the dull Ando have been chasing them down from that point onward. With Elizabeth's own name being tossed around, Ling can't resist the urge to project one more dubious look at Elizabeth, who this time gets him by the neckline. Understanding his slip-up, he rapidly apologizes and says that she's been here the entire time, so it's basically impossible that she had anything to do with it. Inquisitive about the thing the two are squabbling over, Evil asks her dad, yet he closes her down and tells her not to be meddlesome. A man knows not to interrupt a couple's contention, all things considered. Yet their story interests Elizabeth as well as she asks them restarted the gossip that the Devil Sovereign passed on. It was then uncovered that it turns out she has been absent for a very long time. Lip Torment didn't actually have the foggiest idea how it was conceivable. Elizabeth had just been residing in his home for a year. Elizabeth then asks how she is reputed to have kicked the bucket. As per them, the Devil Sovereign passed on in the wake of having a fight with the unbelievable legend that went on for a month. In the end, the legend forfeited himself to safeguard the legend landmass, and he kicked the bucket with the evil spirit sovereign. Hearing this, Elizabeth becomes irate. She conveys her goal towards the two immediately. The dad and little girl pair feel as though they have been shipped to a field of skulls. Maybe any off-base move and the two would bite the dust. With a requesting tone, Elizabeth pronounces that the gossip is misleading. Both Fiendishness and her dad had no decision yet to rapidly concur with Elizabeth's words in case they'd be killed. Yet before they can quiet down, Ling rings in and says that she is correct on the grounds that he is the unbelievable legend, while the lady they are addressing is the evil spirit, Sovereign Elizabeth. This data is by all accounts a lot for their cerebrums to deal with, both almost faint from the data overburden that they have quite recently gotten. Anyway, seeing their responses made Elizabeth imagine that lying deliberately saved them just to embarrass her. Maybe he is saying that he caught the Devil Sovereign gander at her and giggle. This makes her crush the table out of frustration and rise up to leave. She reviles at Ling deep down as she abandons the room and crushes the entryway. Her with the Devil Sovereign gone, Detestable's dad is at long last ready to breathe out the air he was holding in. He then shakily asks Ling what his arrangements to manage him are. Ling, shaking himself, answers that he doesn't know. Time probably gone haywire when Elizabeth got through the time boundary until it at long last synchronized time 500 years after the fact. Sometime thereafter, we see the pair lie down together. Malicious goes to her dad and makes sense of how mind-blowing it is. That reality behind the Devil Sovereign's vanishing is that she experienced passionate feelings for the unbelievable legend and chose to stow away from the world, very much like her dad and mom. Abhorrent's dad tells her not to contrast them with the two. He additionally says that Ling advised them to quiet down since he was presumably contemplating regardless of whether he ought to save them. Astounded, AEL asks then for what valid reason did he save them, assuming Ling was about to kill them in any case. In answer, her dad said that very much like he nonchalantly permitted them to get through, it is likewise similarly as simple to kill them. To dispose of or to save is all up to either the legend or the evil presence Sovereign's temperament. Out of nowhere, a noisy crash is heard as a dismal voice asks them what they are doing in any case, conscious around evening time. Ling begins laughing to himself as he takes out a deck of cards and offers to play games with them. Underhanded's dad simply gazes at him in disarray. Before long, both dad, mother, and girl should be visible, plunking down with serious countenances as Ling makes sense of the principles of the game. Landowner, dissimilar to Ling, who is playing for entertainment only, both Malevolence and her dad accept that this is a test, regardless of whether to dispose of them. Taking a gander at the deck of cards that are radiating in dismal emanation, Evil requests him what the name of the game was. This stumps Ling as he doesn't know if they would get what a property manager was, so all things considered, he names it Mythical Serpent Battle.
Evil asks him what the name of the game was. This really stumps Ling because he isn't sure if they would understand what a landlord is. So instead, he names it Dragon Fight. This surprises both the father and daughter. However, even Elizabeth, who is watching nearby with some high-level concealment magic, is shocked. Lang explains that the two heroes must work together to defeat the dragon, and they decide who is the hero and who is the dragon based on the cards they draw. Sure enough, they thought this game was a test for them on whether they should live or not in their vision. Lang looks very evil, but he warns them to think carefully about their card choices. Lang draws his cards first, and he tells the others to hurry up as well. Evil draws her cards first, but as soon as she touches them, their surroundings suddenly change. Evil's father, who is now Best, was shocked when they found out they had been transported to another realm after picking all of her cards. Evil nearly collapsed, as drawing her cards almost drained all of her magical power. Soon enough, they all had their cards. Ling asked them if either one wanted to be the dragon. They both said no. Looking at his cards, Lang realized that if he got another 4 and an ace, he would have a winning hand. He asked them again if they wanted to be the dragon before drawing his cards. When the cards were revealed, Ling frowned because none of them were a 4 or an ace. However, both Evil and Best misunderstood his frown, thinking he was unhappy with their performance. Lang then played an 8 before passing the turn to Best. As soon as he tried to play a card, a surge of magic flowed out of him and into the card. Playing a card actually cost him some of his life force. Without wasting any time, Best then played a jack. Evil glances at her father, worried, but Best reassures his daughter that he's okay. Then, both Evil and Liping pass. Since it's Best's turn once again, he puts down a combination known as Flying Dragon. All of a sudden, more magic is sucked out of Best's body because the cards he plays create the illusion of the Flying Dragon attacking Lang. Both look shocked. However, when the dust settles, Lang can be seen completely fine. Both Evil and Lang then pass, which gives the turn back to Best. He plays a 3, which Evil passes. Lang then plays a 10 and they both pass. That was the start of their unfortunate end. Lang suddenly plays a straight, shocking the father-daughter pair. This time, it summons a huge wave that nearly washes them both away. Then, Lang plays a trio in a pair, summoning 2 gladiators on a chariot to charge at them. Best grits his teeth. He has nothing to beat them. However, Evil steps up to challenge Lang's cards. Best tells her not to play, as it uses her life force as the price. But Ale refuses. She can't just hide behind her father forever. She then plays another 3 of a kind with a pair that is larger than Liping's cards. As the dust settles, only Evil's chariot stands unscathed. Vest checks on Evil, asking if she is alright, to which she replies that she is fine. However, Lang is not yet finished. Both the father and daughter, along with Elizabeth, are quietly spectating from the corners. Suddenly, an ominous feeling washes over him. With his treasure lying nearby, he summons a pair of jokers and plays them. In an instant, a large crack appears in the realm they occupy. From this fissure emerges a level 3 demon, the Clown King, whose presence even shocks Elizabeth with its overwhelming power. As its eyes wander, it unexpectedly locks onto Elizabeth, despite her attempts to conceal herself with magic. The demon, in a chilling display, asks her what she was staring at before conjuring a knife and threatening her. Elizabeth grits her teeth at this blatant provocation, but she finds herself powerless to respond. The Clown King is, in fact, equal in strength to her. This is particularly alarming because he has been nourished by Lang for an entire year. Lang, unfazed, casually summons something equally as powerful as herself, leaving Bess and Eagle to watch in despair. Despite their best efforts, they realize they are utterly powerless. Suddenly, Bess begins to cough blood, coming to a grim realization. The essence of life seems to be draining away at an alarming rate. Concerned, Lang inquires about his well-being, believing that his injury has yet to heal. However, he sneaks a glance at his cards, revealing that Bess holds a winning hand. Lang misinterprets this as Uncle Best permitting him to play alongside him in his naivete. He genuinely thought he was skilled, when in truth, Best merely allowed him to participate and Lang is, in fact, interrupting his rest. Subsequently, he reshuffles the deck. cancels the summon for the Clown King and reorganizes it within his pile. Apologizing for disturbing their peace, he sulks back to his room. Meanwhile, the father and daughter remain shaken and perplexed, yet relieved to be alive. Elizabeth, once again, misreads his intentions. In truth, this card game served as a display of his dominance over her. The following day, the four individuals stand outside Lai Ping's house as he bids them farewell. Lai Ping asks whether they truly do not wish to stay for a few more days, as the fruits he planted are nearly ripe. In response, Best bows, expressing that he cannot impose on them any longer and that Lang expresses his gratitude for their kindness. However, he also reassures them that once they leave, they will not disclose what they have just witnessed. Evil, too, thanks them for providing some barley tea. Lang, feeling a bit embarrassed, simply scratches his head and states that it is all right. Subsequently, he approaches B and presents him with a memento, his playing cards. After engaging in a game with him, Ling realizes just how poorly he performs in card games, leading him to conclude that the cards should remain with B. As Ling wallows in despair, Elizabeth catches Bess's attention. She then mouths the words, "Hurry up and get out of here," prompting the two to flee for their lives without so much as a farewell. This abrupt departure confuses Lai Ping. What could he have possibly done to provoke such a reaction? Elizabeth, turning back, commands him to prepare food for the queen, to which Lang begrudgingly acquiesces. Meanwhile, Bess continues to flee with his daughter, eventually leading her to plead for them to stop. He comes to a halt. Best sighs first. It was a test of the legendary hero, but then it transformed into a confrontation with the Demon Queen. He recalls just last night when the Demon Queen approached them, slashing across their necks. Surprisingly, however, this did not completely eradicate them. Instead, they found themselves adorned with new magical collars inscribed with runes. The Demon Queen then commanded them to depart the following day, all the while concealing the presence of the Demon Lord and the legendary hero in Newbie Village from the outside world. If not, the curse marks encircling their necks would result in their immediate decapitation. The two had no choice but to acquiesce to the Demon Queen's request. Once the flashback ended, they faced an uncertain future. As they both gaze upward, it becomes clear that they have returned to the very spot where their journey initially commenced. Surprisingly, even the lifeless corpses of the deceased apostles remain, a chilling reminder of their past encounters. Best is astonished. He never imagined he could run such a distance at that speed. In reality, however, Wan Kai provided them with a crucial boost, preventing them from disturbing Li Ping and Elizabeth any further. Carefully scanning his surroundings, Best remains cognizant of the numerous high-level demons likely lurking nearby. Thus, they must depart swiftly. Suddenly, Wan Kai's ears perk up, sensing something rapidly approaching their location. Despite this awareness, he chooses to disregard it this time. After all, if he wishes to avoid a confrontation with Elizabeth, it is prudent to keep his mechanical nose out of others' affairs. Consequently, he teleports himself back home. Just as he does, several cloaked figures appear before Best and Evil. Among them stands an individual devoid of a cloak, who seems to command the group. Best's heart races in horror as he recognizes the Dark Apostle, the leader of the Dark Guild, standing before them. The Apostle, recognizing the significant disparity in their levels, implores her father to permit her to leave with them while he retreats. However, Bess has grown weary of fleeing. When comparing the prowess of the legendary hero to that of the Demon Queen, it becomes evident that these Dark Guild apostles are insignificant. Taking out the deck of cards that Lang had given him, he directs them toward the apostles, which promptly obliterates some of the weaker members in the group. This unexpected display of power surprises the great apostle. He had not anticipated such strength emanating from someone who appears so frail. Bess acknowledges that ever since her mother was taken back to the elf tribe, he has become increasingly timid and has started to evade their problems. However, he now understands that such behavior was misguided. If they can endure this challenging moment, Bess vows to her daughter that he will escort her to the elf tribe and retrieve her mother. Drawing a 4 of a kind from the deck, Bess summons a formidable 4-bomb arrow god, resembling Evil's mother, to aid them. The arrow god conjures a bow and arrow from magic, launching a mystical projectile aimed at all the Dark Apostles before them. They can react. 3 apostles in the arrow's path instantly perish, leaving only the great apostle remaining. Initially, this great apostle sneers and confidently reaches for the arrow. However, the great apostle's hubris ultimately leads to its downfall, as the arrow, even when confronted with both hands, is able to easily pierce through and inflict harm. Once all the apostles have been vanquished, the image of the arrow god dissipates and the cards return to the deck. Bess nearly collapses from exhaustion afterward, as Ale rushes to her father's side, observing the effects of the summoned cards on the environment. Bess decides at that moment to change his profession. It is in that instant that a new profession, the card master, was born. A week later, as Lang had mentioned previously, the fruits in his garden begin to ripen. He can be seen savoring some water in his delightful garden. He notes that his fruit breeding method has proven to be quite successful. However, without anyone to share this joy of the harvest, it always feels as if something is missing. Lang then reflects on all the marvelous opportunities he has witnessed thus far in this enchanting world and realizes that he is somewhat intrigued by what the outside world has to offer. The only problem is that he feels too weak to pursue it. This thought leads him to believe he should simply forget about it altogether. Suddenly, a cloud of dust materializes as Elizabeth teleports next to him. Noticing his forlorn expression, she inquires about what is troubling him. Lang responds that he yearns to explore the outside world, but he feels too feeble to do so. Hearing this, Elizabeth decides to extend an invitation for him to join her on a trip outside. Excitedly, Lang asks if it is indeed true. It would be an entirely different narrative if he had the necessary protection. In the aftermath of the Demon Queen's influence, Elizabeth, having finished her drink, instructs Lang to change his attire promptly. Soon, both are clad in stylish, newly tailored garments crafted by Lang himself. Elizabeth offers a rare compliment, noting that his culinary and sewing skills are quite impressive indeed. They stand out. Lang responds with a hint of pride, asserting that these are, of course, his specialties. Now that they are both dressed elegantly, they prepare to venture into the outside world. With a snap of her fingers, Elizabeth conjures a transfer door, ready to teleport to the nearest town. Lang marvels at the convenience of such an ability. However, before she steps through the portal, he halts her, laying down some ground rules. First, she must not leave him alone. Second, she should maintain emotional stability. And third, she is to behave more subtly among the townsfolk. Elizabeth perceives Lang's demeanor as somewhat demanding and arrogant. This frustrates her, yet she recognizes the necessity of his requests and ultimately agrees. Finally, Lang inquires if she will return with him after witnessing the transformations of the outside world, particularly given the constraints imposed by the time barrier. Although his tone may be assertive, the underlying concern is evident. If he is left alone, he will inevitably become sustenance for the demonic beasts, especially in the absence of the Demon Queen. Elizabeth, however, concurs, albeit for an entirely different reason. Before she can ultimately defeat him, the external world holds little significance for her. This is evident. Nevertheless, the request is not without its stipulation. Upon their return, he must prepare for her a super deluxe assorted fruit pudding. He readily agrees and, with a sense of joy, follows her through the transfer door. Meanwhile, Huan Cad is tasked with guarding the house. Once they step through the transfer door, he is met with the enchanting sight of Fantasy Town, a place that captures the imagination. The town is known as Boer Town, a neutral space where individuals of various races coexist and thrive together. Lai Ping's eyes glisten as he surveys this unfamiliar and intriguing world. He gestures to an equipment shop and a food stall, directing Elizabeth's attention before he begins to wander aimlessly, captivated by the remarkable and exotic sights. In contrast, Elizabeth appears less enthusiastic. She seems more astonished that the transformations in the external world do not appear as monumental as she anticipated. Lai Ping concurs, remarking that it is not as chaotic as Uncle Best had portrayed. Elizabeth, filled with pride, articulates that the current stability is a result of her efforts. Prior to her reign, numerous factions were embroiled in conflict, leading to a tumultuous state of affairs. Through her absolute power, she quelled those factions and established a framework of rules that ensured their equality. Thus, the one credited with saving the hero's continent was not the fabled hero, but rather the Demon Queen. However, her self-aggrandizing narrative seems to go unheard, as Lai Ping has vanished from his initial spot. Instead, he can be observed admiring a stall run by a young girl selling teddy bears. It is as if Lung does not even acknowledge her achievement. However, Lung takes a closer look at the dolls and praises their stitching. He then inquires of the little girl whether she was the one who crafted the doll. In response, the girl affirms her role and offers to sell it to Lang at a reduced price. But before they can complete their transaction, a gruff and demanding voice interrupts, questioning the girl about who granted her permission to set up a stall in that area. This voice belonged to a pig-headed man who, in a fit of anger, kicks the tiny stall the girl constructed, sending her dolls tumbling. The man then seizes the girl, berating her for the fact that her church has not paid any protection money. The little kids accompanying her tremble in fear as they witness their big sister being interrogated for funds. Defiantly, the girl retorts that they have never truly been protected. Thus, she should not be compelled to pay any protection fees. The pig-headed man merely snorts, informing her that since last month, this territory has fallen under the control of the Beast Gang. If she desires to, in order to survive in this environment, she must pay protection money to them each month. Still, the little girl remains defiant, asserting that his claims are false because the church belongs to the nun. She insists that when the nun returns, they will all regret their actions. However, the obstinate man merely shrugs off her threat, retorting that he will expel the orphans today and demolish the old church. Witnessing this injustice, Ling gathers his courage and implores him to stop. Yet, as soon as the orc's attention shifts to him, his confidence dissipates. He attempts to signal for help from Elizabeth, but she blatantly ignores him. Lacking his primary source of power, Ling feels powerless as the thick-headed man demands that he declare his intentions. Looking around at the large crowd that has gathered, he suddenly has a notion. With a booming voice, he declares that a pig-headed man is bullying a little girl and that they should condemn him. Unfortunately, for our protagonist, the surrounding crowd seems indifferent to his plea. This only serves to amuse the thick-headed man. Everyone knows their gang is notorious here, and it is clear that no one would dare to intervene. He helps him with his eyes, then turns to Elizabeth, licking his lips. He assesses their attire and concludes rather hastily that they are all foreigners from the south. Given that the circumstances are not in his favor, Lang attempts to reason with the gang by offering some local specialties from his bag, which he is willing to share. However, the pig-headed man disregards his offer. Instead, he commands his gang members to beat him up and take the woman back to their hideout, thereby locking her away. This infuriates Elizabeth, who believes that no one is qualified to imprison her, especially since she is a self-proclaimed prisoner of Lang. Her anger instantly darkens the skies as red lightning begins to crackle, forming the visage of a malevolent face. The unnatural spectacle causes the pig-faced man to tremble in fear, prompting him to drop the little girl. Realizing that her wrath could potentially devastate the town, Lang desperately tries to calm her down. Grabbing a fan from his bag, he quickly fans Elizabeth while insisting that all she needs to do is instill fear. Fighting with ordinary people like them is unnecessary. Elizabeth, however, coldly harps before ultimately deciding that, fine, she will spare them. Because of Lip Ping's words. However, her display of magic does not escape the gaze of the little girl, who is astonished by the magnitude of Elizabeth's magical prowess. Although her anger is held at bay, soon the clouds dissipate as if nothing occurred at all. The pig-faced man looks around, confused and fearful, at the sudden shift in the weather. He has no idea what just went on, but now all of a sudden he has a bad feeling when facing those two. The demon pig's body trembled with fear as he asked Elizabeth and Lang about why they supported the church orphans. He felt confused and nervous facing them. Payne, realizing that negotiations might not go smoothly, suggested a deal with the demon pig. He proposed paying for protection and asked how much money the demon pig wanted, eager for an opportunity. The demon PCK nervously quoted 10 gold coins for 2 months. Elizabeth, who overheard their conversation from the sidelines, laughed and remarked that a mere 10 gold coins were making a big fuss, and it was utterly foolish. Lang was surprised and he approached Elizabeth asking if she had a lot of gold coins. Elizabeth became really happy after Lang praised her and claimed that she had so many treasures that she couldn't count them all. Lang was taken aback and asked Elizabeth to lend him some, and he would pay back later after selling the vegetables back home. However, Elizabeth wasn't pleased with Lang's proposal. She didn't want him to sell his precious vegetables for a mere 10 gold coins. She called Lang an idiot for exchanging his food for Useless things, and besides, she hadn't brought any gold coins when she came to find Lang. Upon hearing Elizabeth's refusal, Lang was greatly surprised and didn't know what would happen next. Demon Pig inquired whether Lai Ping and Elizabeth would pay the money or not. Lai Ping, feeling nervous, scratched his head and admitted he didn't have any gold coins. He asked if he could use the local produce in his bag as compensation. Demon Pig became furious and accused Lang and Elizabeth of playing games. He declared that he wouldn't tolerate their nonsense anymore and ordered his men to eliminate Lang and capture Elizabeth. Out of nowhere, a bag full of gold coins appeared and smacked the Demon Pig in the face. The Demon Pig got super mad and demanded to know who threw it, threatening to do harm, but then when he checked the bag, he found it was filled with shiny gold coins. Surprising him just then, a man named Hawthor showed up. He had a half-human, half-horse body. He told the Demon Pig to stop bothering his friend and leave after getting the money. Turns out Hawthor was from the Sword Saw Guild. Thunder C. Buckthorn, a powerful and famous adventurer. After realizing he was dealing with a tough guy, that the Demon Pig decided to give him some respect. He told his men to leave, but not before warning a little girl that she might not be so lucky next month. Once the Demon Pig left, Lang helped the little girl, who thanked them for stepping in when nobody else would. Lai Ping was really happy to see the girl was okay. Lang also thanked Hawthorn for helping and offered him some fruits with a humble smile. Hawthorn said it was no big deal and then turned to Elizabeth. He asked if she'd be willing to partner with him on something. The little girl adjusted her glasses and asked what he meant with his words. Hawthorn replied with a suspicious smile, suggesting they move to another place to talk if things work out. He believed it could also solve their financial problems. Elizabeth folded her hands and expressed disinterest, instructing Lang to ask her not to leave. The little girl's younger siblings inquired anxiously if their sister Annie was going out, concerned about her getting into trouble again. Annie reassured them, asking them to return to the church and promising to be back soon. As they were about to enter the pub, Hawthorn advised them to stay close as they didn't know what might happen. Upon entering, everyone in the pub stared at Elizabeth and Lang. One man boldly approached Elizabeth, suggesting she join him instead, as the people around her looked like trouble. Lang and the little girl realized that if they accepted, Elizabeth would unleash her fury and likely harm everyone present. In response to the man's comment, Elizabeth's eyes turned red, and she exuded a threatening aura. Angered, she demanded the man repeat his words. The man, terrified by Elizabeth's intense presence, shook with fear along with his companions. Elizabeth turned her head to Lang and said it was all his fault for insisting on coming to a lousy place and wasting her time. She was really angry at Lang. Lang was nervous and told Elizabeth that they were already there. Hawthorn asked them to enter the private room where there wouldn't be any outsiders to bother them. Hawthorn opened the door and said that he was back. Then a bunch of cute girls surrounded Hawthorn, expressing their words worry and edness to go out and look for him next time. They pleaded with him to take them along. Hawthorn turned his head to Lang and mentioned that he forgot to mention he has a few wives. Seeing this, Lang was shocked and didn't have any words to say. He asked Hawthorn if he really had 4 wives. Hawthorn poured tea for everyone and introduced his wife to them. First was Gasha, a shield warrior. Then he pointed out Lulu, the assassin, Glee, a mage, and lastly Galia, an amazing elven archer. After Lang mentioned he had met a girl with elf bloodline a while ago, Elizabeth interrupted, urging Howard to stop with a small talk, as they needed to leave. One of the girls asked Hawthorn about Elizabeth, questioning her attitude. Elizabeth, visibly angered, responded that she was only acting as a queen like she was. The cattle found it amusing hearing someone call them the queen and questioned her master if Elizabeth's brain was okay. The elf girl observed Elizabeth, and after looking at the shape of her ears, Speckles said that she was a lowly half-blood elf who should not be in front of her.